What's the most satisfying revenge you've ever taken on someone? For me, it all started with my cousin Mark. He was 2 years older than me, and from the time we were kids, he seemed to live for embarrassing me. If I wore a new shirt, he'd point it out loudly and ask if I borrowed it from the thrift store. If I got a haircut, he'd call it the bowl cut special. Whenever our family got together, I became his punchline. At first, I thought maybe this was just what cousins did, but over time, it was obvious he singled me out. He never teased our other cousins the way he did me, and the adults, they always let him get away with it. If I complained, they'd laugh it off. Oh, that's just Mark being Mark. If I got upset, suddenly I was too sensitive, so I learned to keep quiet, even as his jokes chipped away at me year after year. The worst moment came one summer at a big family barbecue. We had about 30 relatives over, people I barely even knew that well. Out of nowhere, Mark grabbed my phone when I wasn't looking, hooked it up to the Bluetooth speaker, and blasted a recording of me singing. Now, I wasn't a good singer. It was something I did in private, for fun, something that made me happy. Hearing my own shaky voice echo across the backyard while everyone laughed and pointed was pure humiliation. I remember standing there frozen, my ears burning, my heart pounding in my chest. My parents gave me that awkward smile, half apology, half don't make a scene, and Mark, he bowed, like he'd just delivered the punchline of the century. That was the night something snapped in me. I realized Mark would never stop, not unless I made him, but I didn't want to scream or fight. That would just give him more material. No, I wanted something cleaner, smarter. I wanted to beat him at his own game. And that's when I remembered his secret Instagram account. I'd stumbled across it a few months earlier, and it was laughably fake. Mark was pretending to be this globe-trotting, luxury living influencer. One post had him in Paris, except there were English street signs in the background. Another showed him leaning on a Ferrari, but the watermark from the rental company was still visible. He even posted a screenshot of a bank balance that looked like it had been made in Microsoft Paint. Most people would have rolled their eyes and scrolled past, but I quietly started collecting screenshots. Every bad Photoshop, every ridiculous caption, every fake flex, I saved them all. Part of me thought maybe I was being petty. Another part thought, just wait, the chance came sooner than I expected. At the next family gathering, Mark slipped right back into his usual role, mocking me in front of everyone. This time, it was about girls, how I'd never get a girlfriend, and probably still had a crush on cartoon characters. Everyone chuckled, and I felt that same old humiliation creeping in. But this time, I was ready. I let him go on for a bit, waiting until he was riding high on his own smugness. Then I pulled out my phone and said casually, "Speaking of exciting lives, Mark, how's your trip to Italy going? You know, the one where you forgot to Photoshop the Dunkin' Donuts sign out of the background?" The room went silent. Mark froze, blinking like he'd misheard me. "What are you talking about?" he stammered. That's when I handed my phone to our cousin sitting next to me. One by one, the screenshots made their way around the room. Mark posing in Paris next to obvious English street signs. Mark leaning on a Ferrari with the rental watermark. Mark's laughably fake bank balance. With each new picture, the laughter grew louder, but this time none of it was directed at me. My cousins were howling, teasing him nonstop. "Yo, Mark, where's your Lamborghini parked right now? How was Paris, bro? Did you enjoy the Dunkin' Donuts tour?" Even the adults, who used to brush off his behavior as harmless, were shaking their heads, chuckling. Mark tried to backpedal, insisting it was all just a joke, but nobody was buying it. For once, his words carried no weight. He left early, sulking and red-faced, mumbling excuses under his breath. The best part wasn't even that night. It was the months afterward. His fake influencer persona became the running joke of the family. Anytime he tried to act cocky, someone would casually drop a line. "Careful, Mark. Don't miss your flight to Paris." At holidays, my uncles would greet him with, "So where's the Ferrari parked today?" The power dynamic had completely shifted. The guy who had tormented me for years suddenly found himself on the receiving end. And the beauty of it was, I didn't have to be cruel. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make up anything. I just held up a mirror to his lies and let everyone see the truth. That night was the most satisfying revenge of my life. After years of being his favorite target, I finally got to watch him squirm while the spotlight turned on him. And the best part, I didn't destroy him. He destroyed himself.
What's the most epic yo mama joke ever? During recess one time, I heard this yo mama joke that was so harsh, the kid actually quit coming to school from being so ashamed. I need to say right now, I totally don't support that joke, and I wish every single day I could go back and let that kid know life gets way better. Consider yourself warned about what's coming. There was this bully who was fat, like this kid who needed to see a medical professional because he was overweight. No matter when you saw him, he had grease and sauce stains on his shirt. But you know what's worse than that? He owned it and took pride in his weight so no one could make fun of him. During school, he wasn't allowed to get lunch because his mom couldn't afford to pay the bill, so instead he stole everyone's lunches, especially the skinniest kid in our grade. But one day, that skinny kid had enough. He screamed at the fat kid and said, "Eat another fry and you're gonna pop." The fat kid was sharp with his tongue though, so he whipped back and said, "Yeah, watch out for the wind, buddy." But the skinny kid wasn't giving up. He shouted back, "Fatty, you want another lunch? Looks like your shirt ate mine." Then the fat kid took things too far. He involved the skinny kid's mom. At this point, everyone started crowding around the two cause things were getting serious. The fat kid shouted, "Man, you're so skinny, your mom breastfed you laxatives." Everyone started crying, laughing at the skinny kid. We knew it was all jokes, but he didn't. We were all pretty sensitive towards the fat kid because as much as we hated him, we knew his mom couldn't afford to feed him and they had some financial trouble. But we don't think the skinny kid got the memo because he cleared his throat, got everyone to listen, then said, "Yo, mama's so poor. She can't even afford to feed me after I'm done railing her. That's why I'm so skinny."
What's the most chilling thing you've said with a smile? In high school, I was the kid most people barely noticed. Not unpopular, not particularly cool, just the quiet one who did well in class, kept to themselves, and smiled a lot because it was easier than showing when something bothered me. Teachers liked me because I was polite, classmates didn't pay me much attention, and that was how I preferred it. Staying invisible felt safe. But there was one person who decided that my quietness made me an easy target. Let's call him Mark. Mark wasn't a stereotypical bully. He didn't shove people into lockers or get into fights. His weapon was words. He was the kind of guy who always had to be the loudest in the room, and he thrived on making people laugh, usually at someone else's expense. Unfortunately for me, I became his favorite target. It wasn't anything huge at first, just little comments when I walked by, mimicking my voice, asking why I always sat alone at lunch. Harmless on the surface, but constant enough to chip away at me. I tolerated it, smiled through it, and never gave him the satisfaction of reacting. That probably encouraged him because he started pushing harder. One day in the cafeteria, I sat at a corner table with my notebook open, sketching. Mark strolled over with his group of friends, saw what I was drawing, and said loudly, "Man, are you writing love letters to yourself? No wonder you don't have a girlfriend." His friends laughed, and I just closed my notebook and smiled like it didn't matter. But inside, it burned. The thing about being quiet is that people assume you don't notice things, but I noticed everything. Who laughed at his jokes out of fear, who laughed because they thought it was genuinely funny, and who looked uncomfortable but stayed silent. I noticed the teachers who glanced over but chose not to intervene. I remembered every smirk, every word. I filed it all away. It all came to a head in chemistry class a few weeks later. We got assigned a group project, and of course, I ended up in Mark's group. From the moment we sat down, he started. At first it was small, mocking the way I pronounced molarity, rolling his eyes whenever I suggested an idea. Then he escalated. He knocked my notebook off the desk, and when I bent down to pick it up, he accidentally spilled water across my notes. His friends chuckled, and even the people not in our group laughed under their breath. I remember remember sitting there, blotting my notes with a paper towel, feeling something inside me shift. I wasn't angry in the way people expect, not red-faced, not shaking, not ready to throw a punch. It was a colder, quieter kind of clarity. I realized I had nothing to lose by finally saying something. I looked up at him, smiled, my usual polite, calm smile, and said in the most pleasant voice I could manage, "You know what's funny, Mark? I already know exactly how your life is going to turn out. You're going to peak in high school, brag about football at every reunion, and then spend the rest of your life wondering why no one takes you seriously. And the worst part, you'll deserve it." The room went silent, completely silent. Mark's grin evaporated instantly. He just stared at me like I'd slapped him, except I hadn't raised my voice or changed my expression at all. I just kept smiling, like I'd made a casual comment about the weather. One of his friends let out a low, "Damn," but no one else laughed. The teacher, who hadn't noticed a thing up until then, finally looked over and asked if everything was okay. I said, still smiling, "Yes, everything's fine." Mark didn't say another word for the rest of class. In fact, after that day, he never bothered me again. He didn't tease me, didn't make comments, didn't even look in my direction. If anything, he avoided me. Word must have spread because other people started treating me differently too. They didn't suddenly become best friends with me, but they looked at me with a new kind of respect, or maybe wariness. It was like they realized that behind the quiet smile, there was a line you didn't want to cross. Looking back, that moment taught me something important. Anger is expected. People know how to handle yelling or even fighting. It's loud, it's messy, and it usually burns out quickly. But when someone stays calm, keeps smiling, and delivers words that cut deeper than any insult, that lingers. That unsettles people in a way they can't shake off. Years later, I sometimes think about Mark and wonder if he remembers that moment. Maybe he laughs it off, maybe he tells himself it didn't matter, or maybe, just maybe, it still echoes in his head every time life doesn't go the way he thought it would. Because for me, that was the day I realized the power of a smile paired with the truth. And honestly, it was chilling even to me.